Hey, everybody, welcome to Act 3. I am so glad that you joined us today on this very fine Monday. In the Zoom booth with me today is someone we really want to talk to because her agency is responsible for the coldest night of the year. And there's more that goes with that. And I'm sure I'm wording it wrong, but we're going to get straight through how Island Crisis Care Society and Violet Hayes, the executive director, makes an impact in our community. Welcome to our program. How are you today?
I'm great, Kathy. Thank you. It's beautiful to see the sunshine.
It is. We're very, very fortunate to have the change of weather is coming. I could feel spring in the air. Primroses are coming to the stores. Daffodils are coming. It's just going to be another couple of weeks and then we'll be warm right through all over again. And I can't wait. How about you?
Yeah, me too.
I think that this spring it has an impact on our community and gives us a sense of, coming out again, right? Tell us a little bit about Island Crisis Care, because I would imagine that during the winter, you may see more clients than you would otherwise. What does that look like?
Um, Unfortunately, we are extremely busy at all times,
Yeah.
but absolutely, our purpose is to provide shelter and care for those in need. And so there's a lot of people in need in our communities. We work in both Nanaimo and in Parksville, an area. And there's so many people experiencing homelessness and that are living, very in very dire situations. And so we try and help where we can, but yeah, we are busy at all times. So
So
challenging.
when you say that you help those that are homeless, what does that mean? Do you provide emergency shelter? Are you in combination with other nonprofit agencies and community working towards creating places that people can feel safe? Or what does that look
Yeah.
like?
So we started back in the 80s with Samaritan House, which was the shelter. And initially it was men and women. And then back when the Salvation Army opened up for men, the shelter for men, the New Hope Center, then at that point we switched over and became the shelter for women. Just in the last few months, many of you, the listeners will know that we've been working very hard for probably about the last 7 years to try and expand Samaritan House because the need was so great. And so we were in a 100-year-old building that was very limited. And I'm happy to say that we're in the process right now of going into a brand new building. Right now we're staying temporarily at 285 Prideaux, which is the old community services building. And so part of a plan with BC Housing is that we moved the women over there. And things have changed a little bit because we also added a floor on the bottom for men. And this funding that we've been able to access is COVID funding. And it's so now we're actually supporting men and women that are medically vulnerable and had been living on the streets. And so the number of people that are either terminally ill, have cancer diagnosis, they're living on dialysis daily. And can you imagine if you were having to do that and you had nowhere to go? So yeah.
I absolutely couldn't. Yeah, and especially
So
with the
we've
colder weather that we've had recently, the curiosity that I have is where have those people gone? How have they been supported?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the challenge, I mean, I'm happy that we've been able to bring people in and support them. And with a partnership with Island Health, we're able to provide some care for them to make sure that they can get to their appointments and that they can get the wound care that they need, all those things. Yeah, but as you mentioned, yeah, being on the street, even if you're in good health,
Yeah.
is not easy. I mean, and we can be excited that the snow is melting, but can you imagine what it's like if you're sleeping outside and the snow's melting, then you're in water?
No,
So,
I can't even.
yeah.
I recall last year when we had so much snow, so much more snow than we did this year. This year was very mild. I think we had about 2 days or something. I think the whole year. But last year, it was my understanding that some of the homeless were up in the north. They were up near the mall, and they were setting fires to various different outbuildings and anything that they could burn, basically, just to keep warm. And how the community seemed to be so outraged that this was happening. And yet I thought to myself, well, what would you do? Like, what if you ever found yourself on the street? How would you survive? And really, I believe that we are all one paycheck away, really, so many of us, especially now with COVID, there's got to be that much more in crisis. Have you seen an uptick based on COVID alone?
Um, I don't know if I'd say that based on COVID.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, COVID has just kind of, yeah, perhaps I would, because when I think about it, the numbers were reduced because of COVID.
Sure.
Even in Samaritan House, we had to go from 14 beds down to 7 because of social distancing. So once and I know it was the same at the Salvation Army and all the different programs that have been running,
Yeah.
have had to make sure that, they have a capacity that they can't go above, and they have to make sure that the 2 meters apart is kept to. So yeah, I guess in that way, definitely the numbers were reduced, which has made it more difficult.
Well, that just means that there's more people on the street too. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, if you're having to reduce the number of beds that are available, and is there a plan to reintegrate those beds to come back, as soon as possible? Like, what will that look like?
Yeah, well, I think the city and BC Housing and the task force
Yeah.
have been working very hard. The coalition that I sit on, we've been working very hard to ensure that we can get some extra beds. So
Hmm.
St. Peter's did open, which was great to have that extra place available for people. And then
Yeah,
they've recently opened a couple of warming centres in the daytime. So yeah, that's definitely, because even if you can at least get in to get warm somewhere, used to be that
exactly.
you could go into a restaurant and use the
Yeah,
washroom
yeah,
or the mall, and now
yeah.
those things are not available anymore.
Yeah, I agree. I think that that has been a huge problem. Someone in my life is homeless and has been homeless for a number of years by choice. And it's very difficult to watch. I mean, he's fortunately in a much better position now. He's moved to Alberta. He now has a job. Things are different for him on a very positive light. But for a number of years, he lived in Vancouver and was homeless there. And so I remember him texting me and saying, Kath, I'm at my new apartment. And I'd say, well, what's your new apartment? He'd say, it's Staples. I'm watching television in Staples, right? Or I'm trying to get warm. I'm in Tim Hortons and they're going to kick me out now because I've been here for longer than 2 hours or whatever it was. But and so with COVID and the restaurants all being closed, I can only imagine that our homeless are struggling to be able to find another safe and warm spot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So, but it's more than homeless that your agency works with. Can we break open some of the many services that you provide for people in crisis?
Yeah, so I mean, we have some supportive housing as well.
Hmm.
So you remember a couple of years ago when there was the tent city, and
Yeah.
so there was an emergency, and we needed to do something. The community needed to do something. So at that point, we stepped up, and Newcastle Place was born. And so that's the temporary supportive housing. We have 77 people that live there and are supported. So that's been a very interesting learning experience, when you bring that many people together.
Hmm.
But we've definitely seen such a community. I mean, when I hear the stories that come out of there, it's just so encouraging. You
That's
know,
great.
yeah, I
Are
mean,
there
just
any
before,
that you would be able to share without obviously having names for confidentiality? We can't do that, but are there
yeah.
any kind of, pieces where you can share with our audience some
Well,
success
I
stories?
just think about before Christmas, myself and a co-worker from the head office, we went down just to deliver some treats. And when we were there was an art show was just starting.
Oh,
And
wow.
so the residents had all got their art together. And I mean, of course, they're still practicing COVID security
Of course,
measures. And
of course.
but they had a room that was decorated with all their art. And then they actually had a competition. The staff had, instead of ugly sweater, they had ugly masks.
Isn't that wonderful? How
Yeah,
creative. You
but
know,
when you just see the joy on
yes,
people's faces, when something that they had created had been displayed. And
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, people that have been living on the street, some of them for so many years,
Yeah.
that now, I mean, their rooms at Newcastle are very, very basic. They
Yeah.
don't have their own washrooms. They don't have any running water in their rooms. It's just a box with a bed and, you know, a place to put some clothes. But I mean, the thankfulness that you see and the joy, just that
Yeah,
they have somewhere warm and they have a community and they care for one another. You know,
absolutely.
it's just so incredible to see.
Yeah, I think
So
that there's a misconception out there of people that are homeless that they, that they're not really bringing much to society. But the reality is they bring a tremendous amount to all of us. And if we would
yeah,
just open our eyes and stop letting the stigma and fear get in the way and get to know some of the people on the street, we'd be awfully surprised about what we would learn.
yeah.
Um,
Actually up in Parksville,
mhm.
we've opened, I guess it was a year and a half ago now, a purpose-built supportive housing called Orca Place. And out of there, we've opened a Handmade for Hope program, is what we called it. And it's the residents come together, and if they're interested and if they want to learn a particular craft skill, like some of them have done woodworking, we've had
Mm,
they learned felting. They've done so many different things, and they make these items, dryer bowls, and then we've been able to sell them. So it's been difficult with, you know, the plan was to go into markets and things, and I think they
of
managed to
course.
get to 2 markets.
Yeah.
But COVID has really made that a challenge. But actually, we're selling items online. So Handmade for Hope is the website, and people can go on there and order. And then we're managing to either bring them into Nanaimo or deliver them out in Parksville. So yeah, that's been amazing. And you see how much people really learn from those skills. And, you know, just around, you know, how much can it sell for, you know, like the marketing behind it. Let's put it up on the
Absolutely.
internet. Yeah, so that's
Transferable
been
and lateral
encouraging.
skills all the way around.
Mhm.
That isn't that marvelous?
It is.
I
And then actually in March, we're going to be starting a kitchen program out there where we
tell us
teach
about
people
that.
how to use the dishwasher, how to prep food. The first thing they'll be doing, of course, is the food safe and then going on from there. So that's a 12-week program that we got funding for. And we're really excited about that because we think by the end of the 12 weeks, they'll hopefully be ready to find a job in the community.
That's incredible.
Mhm.
Teaching people how to do some basic skills that will make them employable is so very, very important. And I know that from my experience in working with our community, when people have something to look forward to, their whole dynamics change. Everything about them changes in a very
Yeah.
positive way.
And that's why we called it Handmade for Hope, because it really
Yes.
does provide hope. And that's what we're all about.
And this is a perfect time to segue in the program to get people to go grab their piece of paper and their pen. Because what we know for sure is that people are going to want to reach out to you and your organization and find out more about how to get involved in Handmade for Hope or where to purchase items. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you are listening right now, which I know you are, even if you're driving in your car, pull over for 5 seconds, grab a piece of paper. We're going to give you some information shortly while you're enjoying the show. In the booth with me today, by the way, you've tuned into Act 3 on CHLY 101.7. Thank you so much for joining us. In the Zoom booth today, I have Violet Hayes, and we are with Island Crisis Care Society, telling you all about some of the great programs that are happening in our community for all people. So with this Handmade for Hope, is the lead some of the homeless themselves who've done this, or have you partnered with other agencies or organizations to help make this initiative fly?
No, it's actually, we set it up. We got some funding initially through, I think it was Spark BC. And so our volunteer coordinator started just putting together the program and has been able to find volunteers who are, you know, teaching and encouraging, coming alongside. And it's just been so amazing to see. So very little output as far as expenses. But I think we got 25,000 to start it up. And now our goal is that it's going to be pretty much self-sufficient soon. So we're able to give a little stipend to the people that come from the program. And that just gives them, you know, real encouragement as well.
Oh,
So,
for sure.
yeah.
Well, congratulations. What a wonderful program. I can't wait to hear more about that or see more about that in community, even go into Parksville when eventually we can all, do that in-person stuff again. But
Yeah. And our goal is actually to bring it to some of our programs in Nanaimo. So
yes.
we hope to expand.
So if you're listening out there and you're a philanthropist, we know we could use your dollars, right, to do this kind of incredible work. What got you involved with Island Care in the first place? How did you become involved?
Um, oh, for many years. I mean, I've worked in the nonprofit probably for, oh, close to 30 years, I think. Maybe it is 30 years. I'm aging myself now.
We all do that. It's
But
okay.
but yeah, I really had moved to Nanaimo in 2008 and really didn't know anything about Island Crisis Care Society. And then I think I saw 3 places where there was a position advertised. Initially at Samaritan House. I was hired as the manager at Samaritan House, and then did that frontline work for about a year and a half, and then the executive director retired. And so I had done similar work before, and so I applied and got into this role. So the thing I just love about my role is it's just so different. Like just seeing the big picture and, hey, we could do this, we could do that. There's a need there. Let's work on that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
You're
it's a
just
good
finding
fit.
the gaps to be fixed.
Yeah, and I love the
Yeah.
collaboration, like working with other agencies,
Of
and
course.
yeah, I mean that's just amazing.
Like you, I moved here about 10 years ago. So I moved here in 2010. So when I first arrived here, I was astonished by the collaboration of community here. Above and beyond any other community I've lived in, Nanaimo has really, really shown that people love to work together to try to find ways to build solutions. And yes, there are obstacles like there are in anything else. Nonprofits, we're always beknownst to money, and that tends to be a challenge all the way around. But what I know for sure is that everybody tries to work together. And one way that we're working together right now is a very important cause, and that's the coldest night of the year. Can you tell us a little bit about the inception of that? How did it get started? How long it's been running? All the good stuff.
Yeah, well, actually, it's very interesting. I guess it was 11 years ago. It was right when I had pretty much just started in the executive director position. And I was just really like praying, like, we need something. We need something to bring the community together, to raise funds, like, so that we can look at the bigger picture. And I think I was at home and my cell phone rang one day. And it was an organization out of Ontario, and they phoned and said, "Hey, we just ran our first Coldest Night of the year. It's a new program across Canada, and we're reaching out to different agencies to find out if they want to be involved." And I think at that first year, I think they had 4 agencies in Ontario involved, and then we came on, and some other agencies as well. And I don't remember what the year, how many were that first year, but there weren't many. There was maybe 20 across Canada.
Mhm.
And so we got involved in Nanaimo. This is our 10th year doing Coldest Night of the Year. And we started out small, but very quickly realized that we did it out of St. Paul's downtown.
Mhm.
And we realized right away that first year, this was not big enough. We
Yeah,
needed a
totally.
big location.
Yeah.
So then we moved over to John Barsby and started using their location to start and end the race. And well, it's not a race, it's a walk.
I hear you.
Some people race, but they're not supposed to.
I know. The competitiveness in some people, some walkers, they really like to roll.
Yeah, but anyway, so we started, and it's just been a huge success. We decided that it would be a really good thing to do in Parksville as well, because we had started a program out there, an outreach program, and we had no funding for it at all. And so we decided, okay, well, we could raise money in Parksville specifically for that program, which we've done.
Yeah.
And so now we have the 2 walks happening, and today's the day. Usually we would have a big event. We would join together at the beginning, have some speakers, usually a client that would speak about, the difference that had been made in their lives.
Yeah.
And then we would all leave and then come back and eat chili together to kind of mimic what it would be like to be in a soup kitchen, kind of that just coming together and being thankful. But because of COVID, we can't do that this year. So what we're doing is we're having a virtual walk. So a lot of people are walking today, just making sure that they're keeping, in family groups or socially distancing. And we're doing it for the whole month of February. So people can walk at any time. The website to join, it's not too late, is cnoy.org. And you can either go in, find someone that you know or a team that you want to support and donate to them, or you can sign up to walk. And we have these amazing toques. Every year it's a different toque. And so if people raise, it's $150 for adults or 75 for children, then they get a toque. So
Isn't that great?
it
Isn't
is.
that
And I
wonderful?
tell you, the most amazing thing that unfortunately we won't see much of this year is
Yeah,
when you see 200 people walking with their hats on
yeah,
down the streets of Nanaimo
yeah. It's
for
huge.
Parkville.
Yeah, so
Just to say,
impactful.
more than the fundraising, it's just to say that we care about those in our community that don't have much. And so
Absolutely. We
that's
see you.
huge.
We see you.
Hmm.
We know you're there. So many people walk by the homeless and don't look down or look across or look near and shun. And I don't know how much work you've done with Wisteria Community Association, but I know that they work very hard as well at feeding the homeless every day of the week, Monday through Sunday, starting again on Monday to make sure that they at least have a bag lunch. And I know that, I mean, I think that the biggest thing that they talk about is recognizing that people can be in crisis at any time, and that we need to be aware of who the people are in our community. And so I think the coldest night of the year, when you see that mass of people walking, you're highlighting, probably for every one of those walkers, there are two more homeless or two more that are in crisis or 10 more in crisis. Do you have any stats on what any of that stuff looks like by chance? I know I'm kind of, if you don't have it on the top of your head, I don't expect you to, but do you happen to know what these numbers might look like?
So as far as in Nanaimo, you
In
mean?
Nanaimo, sure. In Nanaimo
Yeah.
and
So
Parksville.
yeah. So I think the estimation is that there's around 600 in Nanaimo.
Yeah.
And I've heard there hasn't been a count done. There was supposed to be a count done last April in Parksville.
Yeah.
And then of course it got canceled because of COVID. So it's going to be happening this year. But so we really don't have a number there. But I mean, I hear 100, maybe more.
Okay.
It's yeah, it's very,
Wouldn't
and
it
of
be great
course,
if we could have a walker for every single person that we know of? So if there's 600 people
yeah,
that we have identified, not identified as being an overall stat, I mean, right?
yeah.
Wouldn't it be great if there could be 600 community members that could donate? Or I'm challenging you guys all. Let's do it that way. Let's make a challenge to all our CHLY listeners that if you believe in helping another human in our community, this is a great way to do it. All you have to do is go to, and what's your website?
cnoy.org.
cnoy.org.
Yeah, that's
And
the website for the
coldest,
coldest night of the year.
coldest night of the year.
And
Yeah, that makes
yeah,
sense.
and actually, if you think about it, if we got 100,000 people in Nanaimo now, if everyone donated $1,
Imagine what we could do.
yeah,
Yeah, imagine what
$300,000.
we could do.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. The location you talked about earlier, where people were doing the arts, the shelter in place that 70 people live in. I'm sorry, I'd forgotten the name of it.
Newcastle Place.
Newcastle Place. When that first came up, there was a lot of resistance from community that people felt that they were going to have troubles. I live very near that. And I just want to point out it's such a myth that the people that are in that community cause some difficulties within the neighborhood. In actual fact, as I said, I'm right in the neighborhood, and I've seen homeless people walk up and down my street for sure. Occasionally, I see them going into my trash, picking out cans and such. And so I've, come to the habit where I can just sort of set them aside or make it easy for people. But at the end of the day, I've thankfully, there's been absolutely no ruckus. There's been absolutely no, I've not had a moment of discomfort at all. And so I just kind of want to put that out there, is that there is a myth that people in crisis, are going to do crazy things because they're in a crazy situation. Do you have any thoughts about how we can educate our community in such a way so that people are more comfortable with what they're not uncomfortable with?
Yeah, I think it's getting involved. I think when you can actually recognize, I heard such a wise thing yesterday. Actually, I was on a Zoom call, and someone from the Indigenous community made a comment, and this just really stuck with me. She said, "It's interesting. What I've noticed is that we, speaking of the Indigenous community, we love our homeless,
Mhm.
but you guys, you hate them."
Mm.
And that just really struck me. I thought, wow. She talked about
Wow.
how they see their homeless as family, because they are. And it's just heartbreaking when I hear some of the things that people say. I mean, the personal attacks that I've had when we're going into communities and things are happening. You know, it's as if they're not people, and they are. They're someone's mother, someone's daughter, someone's brother, sister. You know, like, they are people. And I think when we get to know them and hear their stories, like, that's been the biggest transformation for me, was, you know, working the front line, working at Samaritan House. And when I would hear the stories, you know, of how they had been sexually abused from the age of 4, and they ran away when they were 14 and turned to drugs to try and escape. And I don't know if it were me, what I would be doing today if that had been my story. So I can't judge that, you know, they any different than me, because I just don't know what I would have done if that had been my story.
Gabby Mattei has a wonderful thought on this, and he basically suggests that it's about the trauma, right? That people, like, almost everybody that is in a crisis situation is experiencing some form of trauma, PTSD, any number of different health issues that go along with it. And that, you know, again, the myth is that they're all drug addicts and alcoholics, and, you know, they've chosen to be on the street because they can't get through their addiction, and somehow that addiction is the ruse for everything that's gone on in their lives. When in actual fact, in most cases, when you speak to people that are in crisis, they're not drug addicts at all. They're not alcoholics, but rather they have been through so much trauma that they have now mental health issues, and that those mental health issues have either gone untreated or are, you know, they're not in a position. I mean, I remember, I'm old, so I remember when in Vancouver we had Riverview, and Riverview shut down. And when it did, the entire population of about 250 people ended up in the east end of Vancouver, and spread out, but a lot of them in the east end of Vancouver. And, you know, and certainly some of them did turn to drugs and alcohol because they had no other coping schemes, right? They had no way of figuring out how to function. But but many of them were sort of lost in their own head and were walking around downtown with no understanding of social skills, no understanding of physical skills. How I know we've already kind of touched on that education piece, but in your experience, when people come and they give you a combat of some kind, and I'm not talking about the homeless themselves, I'm talking about community. If community comes and does it, what do you try to do to get them to revisit the way they think?
I think the biggest thing that we can do, and what our society has been trying to do, is to tell those stories.
Yeah.
Because when you hear the stories and you can really understand that that person is really no different to me. It's just that their situation, their circumstances that they found themselves in, usually through no fault of their own. It happened, and then for whatever reason they turned to whatever. I mean, so if we've done some videos on our website, islandcrisiscaresociety.ca. We're putting out videos as much as we can, and just to really have people hear the stories. And it also gives the people, when they're telling their story, it also helps them, because they feel like they're then giving back. You know, they recognize that they've received, and now they're able to give back to support the others that are still struggling once they start on that road to recovery. And I always want to say to people that, you know, people ask us about, well, what's your success rate? And I want to say that success is just so hard to pinpoint. Like, success for some person that, you know, comes into one of our programs might be that they're able to sleep in their bed. You know, like, we have people come, and if you've been out on the street for years and you haven't slept in a bed, like, that is, you know, it's really hard to get used to those 4 walls around.
Absolutely.
I remember speaking with someone that we actually helped through one of our programs in Oceanside, and just a horrific story. And then once we actually found her an apartment to live in, and we gave her a rent subsidy and ongoing support, so an outreach worker would visit her regularly. She now doesn't need it and has moved on. But I remember her saying, because she had been homeless for so long, that just to be inside, she used to go outside into her yard because she, would start to get claustrophobic about being inside. And so I think for the first couple of months, the success was that she could stay in her bed for one night, without getting up and having to run outside. So yeah, I mean, we just have to be compassionate and caring and know that, we can't, say, oh, this is success from that success. When they get a job, that success. It's very slow sometimes. And for some people that we support, they'll never be at the point where they can get a job. We have a lot of people with brain injury, and just for them to be successfully housed is their success.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
it's different.
I've had Kix on the show from the Nanaimo Brain Injury Society. She's amazing. I absolutely adore her and all that their agency does. What the focus has been recently has been on head injuries as a result of domestic violence, and how many women are walking around with brain injuries that have been unattested or unchecked. And now people are finding, women more than ever are finding themselves homeless and quite a bit quite a bit more vulnerable than they've ever been before. And so I'm curious about your take on women and how Island Crisis Care Society, anybody who knows me knows I screw the names up, but you know what I'm talking about, everyone. Like how can we, I mean, certainly men and women, the crisis is crisis, and they both are affected in different ways from the position of gender. And I would imagine with non-gender biases, there's even more trauma. But from a perspective of women who have been assaulted in domestic violence, do you see an increase in that going towards Samaritan House now because of COVID and because of the constraints that we've had? Or like, can you give us a little bit of an understanding of that?
Yeah, I would think that we work alongside Haven, of course, because they
yeah.
are specifically working with those that have experienced violence. Yeah, I mean, that's what I hear, is that the numbers are significantly up, especially with COVID, because,
Sure.
and also children. We're hearing that, it used to be that the teachers would notice that a child had bruises, or now they don't have to go to school. The same with the women, they're not going out. So people are not seeing them and being able to report. And so, yeah. And if you're stuck at home with someone who's abusing you, it's harder and harder to have that confidence to get out. So, yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's so much isolation that is happening with COVID now that it's affecting everything.
Yeah. I have a background of, and I know it's a bit of an overshare, but anybody who knows me knows I'm pretty darn transparent. I grew up on social services. I grew up on welfare, and our family was very, very poor. My mom's single mother, 3 children. If it wasn't for social services, I don't know where I would be today. So I have tremendous gratitude to the Salvation Army, CKNW Orphans Fund, the whole system. That system at the time was really great for families that were in crisis. However, I know that's about 15 years ago, any social services that were once, really great for people that were in family difficulty, the cutbacks were unbelievable. I mean, things were just shut right off, and men could no longer get social services. They could not get welfare at the time. Now, I don't know if that's changed. I wonder if you can shed a little bit of light on the social service side of things and welfare. Does it still exist? And if it does, what does it look like for people who are homeless and otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, it does still exist. And but for example, the shelter rate. So if you have housing, the shelter rate is $375. Now, do you know anywhere in Nanaimo or parts of it where you can rent for
Oh my God,
$375?
that 375 has got to be 20 years old.
Yeah, it hasn't gone up. So
Wow.
yeah, I mean, it's challenging. So what has been happening, and we've been able to be part of, is through BC Housing, there are some rent subsidies. So we are able to provide up to a $450 rent subsidy. And so that does help, but we're finding now that even with that rent subsidy plus the 375, we still can't find places for people to rent.
No.
The rents are so high.
They are.
So,
I think the basic rent for a bachelor suite is like $1,200 now.
yeah, it's crazy. I mean, And for young people to even get a start if they're working minimum wage, it's, it's very sad. Yeah.
And our
Yeah.
minimum wage is reasonable. We have, I think, $13 or $15 an hour minimum wage. I'm not sure what it is right now, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. I'm a little bit out of the loop, but I know it's not what it was when I was young. I mean, my first wage was $1.28 an hour, and then and then it was the big deal as it went to 3.25. I thought I was like,
Showing your age, Kathy.
I know, right? I don't have a problem with showing my age. Age is just a number. But it blows my mind how we've kind of come this way. But along with the wages changing, so too have the expenses of things, right? So if maybe you're making $15 an hour, that really could very well be in your environment. It could very well be the equivalent of $1.75 an hour. And so we just need to recognize that things are in relation to, I mean, I used
Yeah,
to
well, I
think,
mean, we get calls now from people, who say, oh, the landlord has sold my place, I have
yes,
to move, and I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, there's just nowhere for them to go. And so these are people that, might be working, so many people that are working jobs, they're living in their vehicle because they just cannot find a place.
yeah. What do they call it? Renovate the reno. There's a term that's being used for older adults that live in basement suites of homes, or I live in shared housing, where the owner of the house decides to renovate the bottom of it and they kick the senior out. But there's an actual term for it. Yeah,
Renovict, I think.
Renovict. That's it.
Yeah.
Renovict. And we're seeing a lot of that right now. I know that much of my audience are older adults. How can we help them at this point? I know you were talking a little bit earlier at the beginning of the program. You talked about the whole coalition that you're working with. Can we maybe speak a little bit to that? Who's involved in that, and how we can help make it better for people in our communities?
Yeah, I mean, definitely there's a need for more affordable housing. And so along with, I mean, we hear a lot about the supportive housing and the recent memorandum of understanding between BC Housing and the city. And that's great, but so much more is needed. When we think about the two temporary locations, as Newcastle and Nikeo, that Pacifica Housing runs, those are temporary. So those people are going to have to be moved into the permanent supportive housing. So there really is, even though great strides have been made, we're actually involved, like I mentioned, our place on Prideaux, when those people there move over to the new 702 Nickel, which is going to have the Samaritan House shelter in it, as well as 52 units, I think, of supportive housing.
Wow.
So we'll be moving some people from different locations into that building. And then Prideaux is going to be torn down, and John Howard Society is going to be running a supportive housing there. So there's a couple of other sites as well. And so really great strides have been made. But like I say, if you've got 600 people that are experiencing homelessness, then, there needs to be a lot more. There needs to be affordable housing too. I know that Nanaimo Affordable Housing has got a lot of new ones coming up, and that's so needed and so appreciated. But yeah, we just got to keep at it. And, so we're hoping to, like I said, I love to dream. And so our next step is that we're working towards an affordable housing project as well, because we would like to be able to have all aspects. We have crisis stabilization as well, and we have sobering beds. So we kind of have quite a broad area that we work in. We have lots of programs, 13 programs. And the one thing that we don't have currently is the affordable housing. And that really is the next step. We see our women, especially when they start with the Samaritan House services, they might come into the shelter and then they might move into Martha's Place, which is the supported units with the 24-hour staff. And then the next step would be we have a house in North Nanaimo called Mary's Place. And then we move them onto there. And that's a house with where 6 women live together. And the outreach worker just stops by just once a week, not once a week, once a day, sorry, to check on them and just make sure things are fine. And then the next step is, the rent subsidy or affordable housing. And as I mentioned, what we're finding is there's a backlog because we can't get them that next step.
Right.
So hopefully we can get to that point soon where that will, be available.
So from the time someone comes to Samaritan House to the potentiality of having somebody actually placed in proper housing, what's that timeline look like for an individual-ish?
Yeah, it really varies, but I would say probably maybe 3 to 4 years would kind of be an
My
average.
goodness, that's quite a
Yeah,
while, isn't it?
yeah.
I
I
would have
mean,
thought
and
it would have been a lot shorter of a time. How long do people traditionally stay in Samaritan House?
Samaritan House that really depends on, yeah, if they have capacity for, moving into the supported units, where they'll
Right.
be a bit more independent.
Yeah.
It might be a couple of months, yeah, and depending on if there's room in the other program, right? So there's not really a specific time. And what we do see is, some people come for a while and then they go again and then come back. And it might be a while before they're actually ready to start working on a plan for wellness. Because really, you can't force anyone to do anything. I mean, and it's scary, like,
Oh my
making
goodness,
those
yes.
steps. I think of sometimes, we speak with women and, they're in an abusive relationship and they come to us for kind of a break. And then they'll say, I don't know any different. Like, I have to go back. And they'll go back and, like, we're like wanting to like, no, no,
Oh
no.
no, of course, of course.
But you can't,
You can't. And
it's,
people, women, men, I mean, if you're an adult, you are entitled to live at risk if that's your choice.
yeah,
No matter how much we struggle with that as, as care providers, as supportive
yeah,
agencies, we know that people have to make their own decisions. It's up to them how they decide to live. And it's not a matter of choosing. I mean, I think that the decision for somebody who's been abused to actually go home is not a light decision once they've come out. It's not a light decision when they leave. It takes for some, I don't know what the percentage is, but I'm to understand that it's somewhere between 3 and 5 times that a person try when they leave an abusive relationship. It takes at least 3 to 5 times for them to actually break free and remain on their own, and
yeah,
with support and counseling as well. And there's such a shortage of that as well. I know that Brooks Landing, there's constantly a wait list for people to get in to get support. The Nanaimo Family Life is marvelous for some things, but some of the people that are homeless require much more intensive counseling that someone at Brooks Landing might be better to provide. um, I know that many of the agencies have some form of support, but it takes a real village to support a woman leaving an abusive relationship,
yeah.
for sure.
And we also find the same thing with treatment, right? Like, we often hear people say, well, don't house them until you make them go for treatment. Like, I mean, usually I think the average is like 3 or 4 times of going through treatment before it actually kind of takes. I don't know how you like that before they achieve sobriety. Um,
And even then, right? I mean, there's a potential one. From an alcohol perspective, it's not easy for people to stay
um,
off that road, right? They can, with the best of intentions, stay off for a number of years and then fall back.
yeah. One of my
So
saddest memories and it wasn't that long ago, maybe a couple of years ago, I did a shift over at the sobering beds at Crescent House.
yeah,
And so that's for people that on the street and have either drank or used some substance, and they just need a safe place to come. So it's kind of like harm reduction 101. We're bringing
yeah,
people in, we're giving them a bed, and then we check on them, like, minimum of every hour. We just check to make sure that they're okay.
yeah.
And I remember one morning about 4 a.m., an older fella getting up, and he was shaking so bad because he
Mm,
was in withdrawal from alcohol. And he was a veteran, like older man, probably, I don't know how old he would have been, maybe, but he looked probably a lot older than he was,
yeah,
60 or so. But, and he had to leave in order to go and drink. And I felt so sad, like, that, he had to go out back onto the street in order to drink. And yeah, so sad. We're making strides now. I mean, there is now at the hospital, even there's the managed alcohol program,
yeah.
and we've got to get to that point where we start looking at safe supply and all those things in order to ensure that we can support people in the best way.
Yeah. There is a program that I'm aware of, and I'm curious of your take on it. I think it's called Housing First. John Howard Society was doing some of the planning and some of the creation of Housing First a number of years back. How far along are we with Housing First? Has it been a successful program? Do you have any involvement in it? What is your
Yeah,
take on
so that's basically what we use is the Housing First premise. And when we started up in Parksville back in, oh, I guess it's about 6 or 7 years ago. think it was 2014, we actually kind of got a memorandum of understanding together with different agencies, and we started a Housing First program. And so, yeah, we've been working with that, and that's that same premise that I said. You can't tell people, if you do this, this, and this, then we'll give you housing. You've got to earn it. Like we all have the right to be housed.
Yeah.
And then, but what we do need to do is we need to support that person to maintain their housing. So in Oceanside, we do have leases the Island Crisis Care Society takes on. We work with landlords, and I know John Howard does that in Nanaimo. And we work with the landlords so that, we're taking the risk. And then we bring people in on a program agreement, and then we try and ensure that they have the supports they need to maintain that housing. It doesn't always work. Sometimes we have to have people leave because, they're not doing as they need to do. Like they're having wild parties or, bringing people in, and, we can't have that because we're making that commitment to the landlord.
Absolutely.
But yeah, but we're giving people a chance and trying to support them in the best way that we can.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of people over the many years that I've been involved in social services and community services, actually. And what I've learned is that with Housing First, for the most part, finding landlords that are willing to do this has at times been very, very challenging. What could you say to a potential landlord to get them to consider opening up their doors under these circumstances? It's a weird time of the world, but we need to work together. We need to come together. How could we influence, for lack of better words, the idea that people are much safer in having Housing First as part of their rental repertoire than not?
Yeah, I think about one particular landlady that we have in Oceanside, and she's actually gone out and bought a few more places and then given the leases to us. And the thing that she likes is she doesn't have to worry anymore about the whole eviction piece.
Right.
Like, it used to cost her, like I think she said it was like several $1,000s to evict someone. When they'd stopped paying their rent or they had trashed the place and all those things. She went through so much. And so what she really likes about leasing to us is that we're the ones, as I mentioned, we're taking the risk. We come alongside and we try and have that person be successful. But if they're not and we have to move them on, we can move them on because they're in a program agreement with us. They're not, the lease is ours. So then we can move them out. We go in, we fix up the place, make sure that it's back to where it was, and then we find the next person. And she's just got this continuous flow of her rent coming regularly. If she has an issue, she doesn't go directly to the resident. She comes to us, and then our outreach workers who've got a great relationship with the person,
Of course, absolutely.
they come along and they support and try and come up with resolutions if it can be found.
Yeah. I love the idea of Housing First. I think it's a marvelous model. Like every model out there, there's always room for improvement, but I think it's a beginning for sure. If we could see more community members involved in that, I think it would be of great value.
Yeah.
I'm going to move the conversation just a shade over from housing to just the overall crisis in marginalized communities. So are you seeing an uptick in the way of First Nations, LGBTQ, transgender? Are you seeing what's happening in the way of crisis for some of the more marginalized communities? Has there been a change?
I'm not aware of a change, but then, like I say, I'm not frontline anymore.
Right.
So it hasn't been brought to my attention of any change at this point. So.
I'm glad to hear that, because usually, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not a great believer in status quo, but it's wonderful to know. I mean, we know when something significant happens throughout our agencies. How do you perceive the coldest night of the year transpiring this year? Are you doing a video thing? How are we celebrating the coldest night of the year beyond just people walking and coming to the website and signing up? Is there a celebration going to happen, or what does that look like?
Well, I think they're doing things on Facebook. I know I had to do a little video for the opening ceremony, which
I had a girl. You're listening to the radio, by the way. For those of you that are watching this on YouTube, you can see how fabulous she is. But I can tell you from the radio perspective and me on video, I get to see her. You guys, she's marvelous. She's gorgeous and fabulous. So you got to watch the video for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I know that Elspeth is our development person. She said that she's going to be out today because she did hear from quite a few people that they were going to try and walk today. So she's going to be out with her camera. And yeah, and as mentioned, we had someone come in the office the other day, and someone who has walked with us, actually, as we were reminiscing, I remembered that she worked for Shaw, and Kelly. And
Oh, I love Kelly. Kelly and I are very
and
good friends.
yeah, so it's her, I think it's her great aunt who's
That's
100
right.
years old and walking.
It was actually Kelly's post that inspired me to phone you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so we were reminiscing about that first walk, you know, and how we started at St. Paul's and then walked down the downtown area. And she's been involved right throughout and now has her 100-year-old aunt walking this year.
I just
So
think that's amazing. I have to, what a kudos to Kelly. Kelly, I miss her so much. You know, certainly Shaw, I do a lot of work with Shaw as well. Of course, Act 3 television is coming through Shaw. The show on Shaw is still going, although it looks like it's going to take a wee bit of a hiatus. Hopefully we'll be back for new productions coming up soon. But because of COVID, getting into studio has been really, really challenging. But Kelly was such a great part of our team. We've done so much with her and I miss her so much. She's just an amazing gal.
yeah.
And her sister too. Her sister does a lot of great stuff as well. So yeah, for sure. We're coming near to the end of the program. I can't believe we're almost there. We've got a few minutes left, but this is kind of the time in the program where I invite you to share really your wisdom and your insights. First of all, before we do that though, I just want to do another recognition of your contact information and such. If you have just tuned in, ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM in beautiful Nanaimo. This program actually goes all the way from Duncan to Campbell River, across to the Sunshine Coast, and even good parts of Vancouver. So please continue tuning in, and thank you so much for joining us today. In the Zoom booth, I have Violet Hayes. She is the executive director of Island Crisis Care Society. We really need your help, point blank. And here's how you can help us. How do people reach you?
So our website would probably be the best way, islandcrisiscaresociety.ca, and there you can go in and look at all the contacts, look at all the different programs, and as I mentioned, those videos, like the videos of the clients, our residents, just so inspiring when you hear what they've gone through and how they've moved forward. And also Coldest Night of the Year, cnoy.org, and then you find location and you can hit either Nanaimo or Oceanside and Parksville, or anywhere else across the country. Like it's Canada-wide, and it's just a wonderful walk that happens every year. So yeah, it's not too late for you to walk. You can walk 2 kilometers or 5 kilometers and just get out there and then contact us. If you raise the money, you can get a toque and wear that toque proudly.
And what was the dollar value for the toque? Was 150 for an adult?
150 for an adult and 75 for a child.
Oh,
for you.
fantastic. What color's the toque? I'm curious because I can't
it's
see.
Blue this year.
A blue toque.
Yes.
Blue skies coming in for all of us, that's for sure.
And it has a pom-pom.
Oh, and all the better. It's got
I should have brought it and put it on my head.
Well, the radio listeners wouldn't be able to see it, but our Zoom
right.
sure would on the YouTube channel. By the way, since that is up there, after this broadcast, if you missed it or want to know more about the broadcast tomorrow morning or Tuesday morning, that this will be up on YouTube. And I will ensure that the links to some of what Violet was talking about are available in the chat part of the box on the YouTube thing. I'm not really good with the verbiage of YouTube. I'm still learning how to use it myself, let alone up and post stuff. But the good news is you'll be able to access this information. So I invite you to listen again. There are some major parts of this conversation that really require your attention. One of them has to do with, creation of Samaritan House and perhaps finding ways to donate for the 600 people that we know are homeless, whether you do it through the walk or whether you do it in other manners. We'd sure love to get some support that way. There's a time when we need to come together, and fundraising now is not as easy as it once was. Not that it was ever easy, but certainly COVID has made it more challenging. So if you can find a way to contribute, please do so, and do it today. So my dear, comes the time. I'd love to hear your wisdom.
Oh, my wisdom. I don't know that I'm very wise, but
Sure you do. Sure you do. You've been doing this work for a long, long time. I'm sure there are some things that have sort of sat with you and really resonated that you can share with our audience so they might look at the world a little bit differently.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, for me, I think the thing is that to always try and see the good. That's something that I try to live by, and to find joy. In all situations, we can always find something good, and be thankful. I mean, it's just trite words, it seems, but it's just so true. I mean, there's always positive, and we are so blessed. When I think about where we live and the community that we work together with, yeah, there's just so much to be thankful for.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And gratitude really does go a long, long, long way. At the beginning of the hour, we talked about the stigmatism. I think that goes with the homeless. And in reality, any one of us could be homeless tomorrow. It's a matter of, by the grace of God, go I. And we're just really lucky that we're in the situation that we are. So to be able to navigate through that and help those that are less fortunate than than ourselves is really,
Yeah.
I think, a foundational part of just the humanness that we all share as a one, as humanity. So the gift of giving goes a long, long way. I'm really delighted that you came to our program today. Thank you so much for joining us, Violet. It has been an absolute treat, a wonderful pleasure. Can people contact you by telephone, or like if there is a crisis, how do people reach you, or how do people reach your agency?
Our agency phone number is 778-441-4227. Yeah, I mean, we're not a crisis line, so
Of
the
course,
crisis line in town does that very, very well.
of course,
And
of course.
but if people do need some, just have some questions about housing or some of our programs, uh, how can they help? We love to hear from people that want to volunteer. So yeah, any of those things, we'd love to hear from them.
And there's no doubt volunteers are the backbone of so much of this work. And so a real shout out to all of the volunteers who have been doing such an
Yeah.
extraordinary job, not just with the walk, but with everything that you do within your programming.
Yeah.
So congratulations and great success moving forward to you. Thanks so much for being a part of the program today, Violet.
Thank you, Kathy. I so appreciate it.
Oh, such a pleasure. I'm glad you were here. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for us this time. Thank you so much once again for joining Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. Please join us next week, same time, same station. You know you want to. It's at 1 o'clock on every Monday. So come on. We want to hear from you. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you next time on CHLY.